Testing? Are we on? Oh, yeah, we're on. I got to get back here. Well, first of all, let me welcome all of you here tonight for the 7th District Democratic Congressional Political Forum. I want you all to give yourselves a round of applause for being here. The Northwest Voice newspaper is the sponsor of this event because we thought it was important to bring the candidates to our communities so that you could hear firsthand what their ideas and thoughts are. Because on February 4th, you guys are going to make a very important decision. You're going to decide who's going to be the next congressman representing you in the 7th District. Congressperson. I'm sorry. Terry, straighten me out. Congressperson representing you in Washington. So, before I go any further, this beautiful establishment, this beautiful building, I want to take and bring up the pastor who house we happens to be in. And I want to introduce her and have her say a few words to us. Dr. Bethea.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Welcome to our home. It took 5 years for us to acquire this building, and people keep asking, what is happening at Security Mall? So there are cards all around you that tells what is taking place here. In another 18 months, we will be finished, but we have on the first floor, we have urgent care coming in, we have the Baltimore County Health Department, we have a 24-hour daycare, we have Chick-fil-A, we have a food pantry, and some other things. There will also be a community conference room, which means anytime you have a community meeting and you're looking for somewhere to meet free of charge, you can come with your organization and there will be a place to house you. Up here on this floor, and people keep saying, why would a church buy a mall? Well, our church is located in the community center. We're building a community center. On this floor, we have the sanctuary. We have a bridal suite for weddings. We have a hair salon. We have an office of workforce development. We have a youth center that's coming. Next week, the superintendent's coming, and we're going to begin forming the after-school program. When I taught at Woodlawn Middle, what we found was from 3 to 6 p.m. are the most vulnerable hours for our children because they're out of school, but we're not home yet. And so you can give them to us, and we're going to have programs here for them, summer school, after camp, all kinds of activities on this floor. We also have, what else? There's just so much. But I'm glad you're here tonight so you can see the beginning process and wait till 18 months from now. You're going to be very proud that Woodlawn has a community center with many, oh, I forgot one more thing, the daycare and the adoption agency that's moving in, they start construction in a couple weeks, and they have 20 family therapists on staff. So when we did our needs assessment and we found out what the needs were in the area, we have housed it for the needs. And so please be clear when you share. Say, no, it's not just a church. The church is in the community center. And so welcome to our home. We're happy to have you here tonight. We hope it's the beginning of many community partnerships, and we love you. God bless you.
Baltimore County is so lucky that this facility is sitting right here. Now, are there any elected officials sitting in the audience? Okay, we've covered that. Izzy. Izzy Patok. That's right. Baltimore County Councilman. Now the other, and Central Committee members. Go ahead. All right, and George. we have the illustrious Cheryl Pastor, school board member, and Danny Blount, Central Committee. Okay, so we're going to get this forum started because we're running a little behind time. But again, I can't say it enough how happy I am to see all of you out here tonight. We sent a message to the individual sitting behind me on this stage that in Baltimore County, and especially in these communities, we care about what's going on in our political arenas. You're here tonight. You could be a lot of different places, but you're here tonight. So without further ado, am I gonna introduce these candidates or are they gonna introduce themselves? Okay, you'll do it? Okay. So we're gonna begin. Oh, I'm back up. Let me take and introduce the moderators. Now, we took great pain in making sure we did this right. The first thing is, all three of these moderators live in the 7th Congressional District, which I think is a wonderful thing. The next thing is, we thought we would bring radio, newsprint, and TV. So I'm going to start here to my right, which is Senator Larry Young, WOLB Radio. In the middle here, I don't know how many of you out there know the Northwest Voice newspaper, but if you know it, this young lady here is responsible for a lot of the good stuff that you get out of there, and that's Janet Anderson. And when we talk about TV, how can you talk about TV without talking about Charles Robinson from Maryland Public Television? Okay, now I'm going to take and give the mic to the moderators.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As Kenny Brown said, February 4th is an important date. Make sure you read all the information in the January issue of the Northwest Voice. There's a couple of important things to remember, such as there's no early voting. So make sure you don't go to Randallstown Community Center or Woodlawns Community Center. Go to your polling place. And rain or shine, snow, sleet, hail, please make your vote count. We're not sure how many of the community members know a lot of the candidates. You're from different jurisdictions, Baltimore City, Howard County, Baltimore County. So we'd like for each of you to tell us something about yourself as if we've never met you, never heard anything about you. You'll have 2.5 minutes. What we really would like to know is at what moment did you decide to run for office? We're going to start with Senator Jill Carter. She drew the lot. And then we'll move to her right to Delegate Branch.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Pastor Bethia. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Good evening, and thank you for coming out. This is a very, very important opportunity. I am State Senator Jill P. Carter. I've been in the Senate for just 1 year. Prior to that, I served in the Maryland House of Delegates for multiple years, many terms. I resigned from the House of Delegates in 2016 and became the Director of Civil Rights and Wage Enforcement for Baltimore City. Last year, there was a void, and people urged me to run for the Senate because they felt that we needed real leadership in the Senate. Couldn't have ever anticipated being here today with the untimely death of Congressman Elijah Cummings. But as soon as I knew about it, and as soon as Governor Hogan announced that there would be a special election, I felt immediately compelled to offer myself for service at a different level than what I've done in the state so far. I was born and raised in Baltimore City, educated and served here. My father was Walter P. Carter, a civil rights some say activist. I say authentic civil rights leader that dedicated his entire self to the cause of freedom, justice, and equality. He died when I was just 7 years old. And from that time, I decided that I think initially to fill a void as a little girl, I wanted to dedicate myself to the service of others. I always was raised to believe that there are things much bigger than yourself and that your only purpose is to fight for those things. When I first got to the Maryland House of Delegates, I had as some say, we talk about with like law enforcement, a rough ride. I was only the third ever black female attorney in the Maryland in the Maryland General Assembly, and for the first time in the House of Delegates. Back then, I believed in all of the things I was raised to believe, and as a practicing attorney, I believed in the rights of the accused. I believed in second chances. I believed in constitutional policing. I believed in law enforcement reform. I believed in juvenile justice reform. And frankly, the Maryland legislature is just beginning to catch up with the vision that I had back then. Briefly, what we need in the Congress now is someone that will be a champion for the people and put the people's interest above everything else. Jill
Thank
on
you.
the Hill,
Thank
February
you,
4th.
Senator.
Thank you.
And now, next we'll have Delegate Tamage Branch, and I'll remind the speakers that there are 2.5 minutes. I'm going to hold up the yellow card when there are 30 seconds left, and then the big, bold red card when your time's up. Thank you.
Testing. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? Great. Look, I decided to run for the House of Delegates back in the early time, right after I finished college. But Karen Mitchell thought I was a little bit too young for that. So I worked with Karen Mitchell over in Washington, D.C., Maryland's first African-American congressman. I learned the ropes. I learned how everything worked, how everything operated. But yet at the same time, he said I needed to wait my turn, wait my time before I would become somewhat of an elected official. He wanted me to learn. So he's a young fellow from East Baltimore, so eager to get into politics, whose career and whose college degree was that of political science, wanting to be a leader, wanting to represent a group of people. Finally, I got that opportunity. So, as a result of being here today, I'm so happy to say that I wanted to run for Elijah's seat because I wanted to fill the void. I knew we lost the vote in Washington, D.C. I wanted to be the one to go over and make sure that I represented each of you. I represented the citizens of the 7th Congressional District. Also, let me just say that you need someone in Washington that can hit the ground running, that knows exactly how things operate over there. You need a person that understands the committee structure. You need all of that. But I've spent 25 years in the General Assembly. I am the House Majority Whip. I've currently served, right now, I currently serve in the capacity of helping each of you all over the state. That's the role of my job in Annapolis. I am the whip of the House. I move legislation, pass legislation for every faction of this state, especially the 7th Congressional District, the district that I live in and I've lived in all my life. East Side fella that want to do the right thing. I believe in making sure that crime is taken care of and that crime gets a focus. I want to do that. I want to make sure
Thank you.
that we do a number of things. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Delegate Branch. We'll hear next from Mr. T. Dan Baker, and we'll ask you to keep the mic.
Here.
No. We're recording this, and we want to make sure everyone is able to hear you clearly. Thank you. And again, please make sure you let us know at what moment, what inspired you to run, at what moment did you decide to run?
My name is T. Dan Baker, progressive candidate for Maryland's 7th Congressional District, and I'm from the school of under promise and over deliver. I walk the talk. For the past 25 years following graduation from the Virginia Military Institute and starting with the Peace Corps in South America, I've worked in community revitalization and environmental justice in some of the toughest countries on the planet. In many of these countries I've worked, I've seen the severely negative impact that failed leadership and corruption can have. And under this president, and frankly, Baltimore City's government, I believe we continue to head in the wrong direction. I've lived in the district for 15 years, and I'm running for Congress because, frankly, I'm ticked off. I'm particularly ticked off about the state of local and national race relations, corporate influence in government, regime change wars, and the lack of leadership at the highest levels, particularly in response to climate change. In answer to these concerns, with District 7 support, I will fight for improved race relations by leading a fresh, innovative, multiracial, bipartisan dialogue in support of a 21st century Civil Rights Act, addressing existing and future potential racial concerns to include immigration. The point is, within 2 decades, there will no longer be a majority ethnic group in the United States. We'll all be minorities, and we have to work on how we're going to get along. As your congressman, I will fight for reduced corporate influence in government, calling for term limits of no more than 16 years total time in Congress, and joining the fight to overturn Citizens United. As your representative, I will also fight for less interventionist foreign policy. You know, today, the United States spends greater than 50% of its annual budget each year on defense, while meantime programs of the people such as healthcare, education, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, and the environment all combined are only 25%. Who are we at war against? What happened to post-war de-escalation? Finally, voting for T. Dan Baker is a vote to reverse climate change, while at the same time establishing new jobs and reducing crime in District 7 by establishing the first all-renewable energy municipality in the United States in Columbia, Maryland, recruiting, training, and transporting the un- and underemployed of District 7 to work in solar and wind turbine manufacturing, renewable grid conversion, and systems installation.
Thank you.
February 4th, vote tdanbaker.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spicer. Harry Spikes, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor for me to be here this evening. My name is Harry Spikes. I am the former district director for Congressman Elijah Cummings. I worked with the congressman for 15 years, all the way up until the day that he died. I'm gonna be very brief. Let me read something to you real quick. These are the issues that I worked on with the congressman: housing, Social Security, veterans issues, workers' compensation, homelessness, senior concerns, energy, health, education, policy, crime prevention, public safety, witness protection, disability, transportation, community outreach, drug addiction, youth engagement, employment issues, and civil rights. Because I had 2 minutes, that's why I had to read, y'all. My reason is this: there's no learning curve here for me. To answer your question, I do not feel as if though this is a void. I chose to run for Congress 2 weeks after the congressman died. I went to his gravesite because I wanted to know, what should I do with all these skills inside of me? And for me, it's continuing his mission. That is my reason. I ask everyone this simple question: for all the great services that we provided, for all the things that we did, my question to everyone is, who do you all think did it? Who do you all think worked hard with them? Who do you all think read all that information or policy and broke it down for him so he could be effective and efficient, as he would say, to the community and be a great leader for all of us? It's my honor to represent the 7th District, but I feel as if though inside of me is the energy that I've had, that he gave me. And that's what all I want to do. I want to make sure that I tackle issues, but also it's just not about his ideas. There were a lot of ideas that I had, that I shared with him, that he wasn't able to complete because he passed away. And so I just really want to take the time today to let you all know that you do all have a sincere leader. I have ran his Baltimore City office, his Baltimore County office, and his Howard County office. I managed all of his staff. There wasn't any letter that went out that I didn't read or I didn't sign. So as I said to you all before, you have great candidates, but I'm your champion. And I will say this, Spike stands for this, because this is my goal, truly. I want to support people in kindness and engineer sustainability. Because I believe in my heart, if you create things that work and that are sustainable, you need not go back to the same issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sophia Robb.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Saphir Robb. I am from Park Heights. I was born in Sinai Hospital, and I grew up in the 7th District. I've always been devoted to the 7th District. I had 7 siblings. My father was a steel worker at Eastern Stainless Steel before opening a small business, and my mother was a teacher. I had 2 brothers that I lost. One was lost in the rain of gunfire. As I was a freshman at the University of Maryland, I had to come home from school, get his body, wash him, and bury him. And I had another brother who went to prison for 26 years for a crime that he did not commit. My sister and I were fortunate. She became a tenured law professor at Harvard at age 35, and I was able to establish a strategy company as well as a community development company that focused at the intersection of community development and growth for the citizens of our district. I worked with I Can't, We Can. We were able to get 15,000 people off of drugs, recovery, work. We did this work by engaging people at the human level, making certain that we recognize the fact that the best way for us to repair the problems with our district are through engaging the people of our district. And way too many people have experienced what I've experienced. They're frustrated. People who have made careers out of public office pursuit have not been the best at their job. That's the fact of it. I think that a rare exception to that statement is Congressman Elijah Cummings, who served on the board of I Can't, We Can, and showed up regularly or sent a proxy. And I respect him for that. When I worked with President Barack Obama on his transition team, he encouraged me to run for office. And he told me there will be people from the former generation that will try and stop you. They said they would cut a part of his body off on a hot mic once. They don't like people who do community service, community development. But we have got to commit, if we are to have a future, to these issues. We have got to stand up and sacrifice whatever we were doing in the name of the continuity and posterity of our people. I believe that time is now. With the passing of Congressman Elijah Cummings, I see the end of his day, his sunset, as the dawn of a new day. I expect to be the sunrise, as the son of this district for that dawn.
Thank you. Mr. Kwaisi Mfume.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My thanks to Reverend Bethia, to her husband, to the members of this congregation for again opening up their doors to this house of worship that we might have this debate. And my thanks to all of you. We've got a row of very qualified candidates. I happen to be one of them. I think that I've always trusted you as voters. I will trust you again. There's a very important decision that you have to make. Now, I grew up here in Baltimore. My story is a story of redemption. My mother died when I was 18. We were extremely poor. I had to drop out of school to take care of my 3 sisters. I worked odd jobs, shining shoes, carrying groceries, and whatever else I could do to provide money to get back to her to raise them while I lived in a 6x9 room for about 4 or 5 years. I got angry like a lot of young black men and young poor white men in this society and dropped out, ran with gangs, was arrested 13 times by the time I was 18. I had no education as a high school dropout, no future, no skills. I was a teenage parent, and I was lost. And so when I talk about redemption, for me, that's what my life has been about in terms of trying to help redeem others. And when I thought about this, and I thought about Elijah, let me just say a couple of things. The question was, when did you get hit with it? I got hit with it 5 days after Elijah was buried, when I saw another murder on TV of another young person by a young person. And I just decided that I could not continue to just look at TV. And I talked with people like Erica Bridgeforth and Daphne Austin with mothers of murdered sons and daughters, and decided that I still had something to give. So I got back in the race on the things that caused me to run in the first place: a need for better education, a need to try to protect the rights of working men and women, a need to make sure that we were uplifting our communities and trying to unite people across this district. So I'm interested and eager and looking forward to the discussion tonight on all these and many, many more issues. But I know one thing: this is not a perfect nation, and we are not perfect people. but God still calls us to a perfect mission. It is a mission to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, house the homeless, teach the illiterate, provide guidance for our young, and security for our seniors. I want to go back to Washington, D.C. to spend the rest of my days fighting for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Paul
Thank you.
Conca.
Good evening. The question was, when did you decide to get into the race? I'm a regular reader of the newspaper, listener to the radio, and watch TV. And after about the 10th candidate had announced, and I'm tracking all 10 of them, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I've got more and varied and relevant experience than those 10, and so I was about the 12th candidate to file. So let me tell you why I can say that. And any one of these candidates, by the way, is an outstanding candidate, and you'd be pleased to have any of them as your congressman or congresswoman. But I've got experience in the military, academia, the federal government, and private industry. I'm a retired Navy captain, active and reserve, and 2 tours as a commanding officer, learned the skills of leadership. I'm retired from the federal government 5 years ago. I've worked in 5 separate federal agencies, so I understand the regulations and government from the inside. I've got a law degree, so I understand it from the outside. For the last 5 years, I've been a substitute teacher in Baltimore County, kindergarten through 12th grade, also a university professor in finance at University of Maryland Global Campus, so I understand the importance of education. And as a management consultant with the worldwide management consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton, I've learned how to make things efficiently. So I've got the skill set to do the best job. But as during this campaign, I was reflecting on, I want to bring back the idea of public service to that in the congressional race. So you've heard the phrase public servant. I want to prove it to you by, I've committed to, should I be elected, I would donate 1/2 of the $174,000 congressional salary to charitable organizations in District 7. The median household income in America is a little over $63,000. Maryland is the richest state in the country, and its median income is a little over $83,000. Even half of the $174,000 still puts you above the median half. So I would like to focus on representing the average, because rather than get lost in the clouds. My 2 main issues are climate change. If we don't fix that problem, we won't be around to fix the other problems, and bring back financial responsibility to the federal government. Paul Conca for Congress. Thank you.
Delegate Terry Hill. I have a question for the audience real quick. How many people know who they're going to vote for? How many are undecided and hope to get more information today? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Pastor Bethia and church, for having us here and for Northwest Voice. My name is Terry Hill. I grew up in the 7th District. I was actually born in Philadelphia, moved down here in 1969 with my family. My father, a Morgan State graduate, worked at Social Security in personnel, and he set the example. He was one of the 3 people who made sure that Black folks were employed at Social Security by reviewing those applications and make sure that they were directed the way they needed to be directed. I didn't know that about my father. He died about 20, 25 years ago, until I was door knocking a year ago, and a gentleman said to me, "I knew your dad. I knew your dad." So I knew he had worked at the Urban League. I knew my mother had always been a fighter. Her name's Ethel Hill. Some of you may have heard of her, particularly if you're on the Central Committee. But she came from a history of people who knew how to fight for civil rights. Her parents, her father with a 6th grade education, her mother with a high school education, raised both of their kids in Chester, Pennsylvania, which by the 1970s was the poorest city in America, having been a World War II industrial city. But they got both of their kids into college. Well, my parents moved my sister and I down here to Columbia, Maryland in 1969 at the height of the Civil Rights Movement, because they wanted for us a better future, and they bought into the dream that Jim Rouse was building that said, if we can all get together and get past the otherism, if we can face the truth of our history and make deliberate efforts to do better in the future, we can do better. So my parents had the dream that all of you have, that they could have a better life for their children. And I was fortunate. I was identified at an early age as having some gifts. And I went on to get my engineering degree at Harvard and my undergrad and my medical degree at Columbia, and I came back and started my practice in plastic surgery, where I've been serving you and your relatives in this community for almost 30 years. I moved into public office when I had a calling because the problems we were facing were too significant, and it was clear to me that politics was not a spectator sport, and I needed to get in the game. Elijah Cummings mentored me, he supported me, and when he died and I talked to the other people who were running, it became clear that I had a duty to say yes to this opportunity to make the difference. Thank you. Send a doctor to the House, Terry Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Professor F. Michael Higginbotham.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming out. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. I've been doing these events over the last couple of weeks. I've been doing a number of them. And a couple of days ago, I did one. A fellow came up to me afterwards. He said, "Professor, I like what you said, but," he said, "you're a little stiff." And I thought to myself, I said, I've been accused of being a lot of things in life, but being a little stiff was not one of them. But after I thought a little bit more, I started to think about why he might have thought that. And the reason why he might have thought that is because I'm very, very concerned about the direction of this country. I'm very concerned about the state of our district. And I think that's what this fellow was seeing. He was seeing that concern. He was seeing that discomfort. And let me tell you what I'm specifically concerned about. And that's why I decided to run. Let me tell you what I'm concerned about. I'm specifically concerned about the elderly being able to afford their medicine. I'm specifically concerned about women in the workforce, 81 cents on the dollar, 67 cents for African American women. I'm specifically concerned about laborers and being paid a decent wage. And I'm specifically concerned about black and brown people being wrongfully incarcerated in the criminal justice system. Let me tell you what I stand for. 32 years teaching in this district. What I stand for is three things. One is creating opportunity for everyone in our society, equal opportunity for everyone. We need some better anti-discrimination laws in this country. Two, empowerment, economic, educational, and political. We need to change some laws and empower people. And then three, values. My values are your values: honesty, integrity, hard work, transparency, fiscal responsibility. When Donald Trump criticized this district, I was pissed. I was angry because he doesn't know who we are in this district. He doesn't know our character. He doesn't know our trust. He doesn't know what we're all about. You send me to Washington, he's going to find out. Higginbotham for Congress, I won't let you down.
Thank you. Dr. Leslie Grant.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm Leslie Grant. I'm a general dentist and a speech and language pathologist. I live in the 7th District. What you may not know is that Congressman Cummings was the co-chair of the Oral Health Caucus of Congress. Yes, there is an Oral Health Caucus. There are 5 dentists in Congress. I want to be the 6th to go. Elijah Cummings was someone that we could go to when we needed advocacy for oral health. Elijah Cummings is someone who said he was embarrassed and hurt when a young man from Maryland, a 12-year-old, died subsequently from a dental infection that went to his brain. It was Elijah Cummings who said, we have to change this. Elijah Cummings went through many schools in his district with the lunchbox program that we presented with oral health nutritional information. That is not the only reason I am running. I also said I'm a speech and language pathologist as well. One of the things that I know as someone who is a healthcare provider, but also has insurance and seeks healthcare, is that copayments are expensive. That people can have good insurance, they can have very good insurance, but cannot afford the copayments to receive the ongoing physical therapy that they need because they don't have the extra $120 a month to direct toward that. People cannot afford to pay the $5,000 it costs for hearing aids. Generally, healthcare insurance for seniors especially does not incorporate hearing aid coverage. You asked why I decided to run. I talked about Elijah Cummings' commitment to oral health. I also want to say that I thought I was the 12th person to file on the 12th of November, but maybe I was the 11th. One of the reasons I filed, and I filed for both elections, for the special election primary and the general election, I filed because there was some negativity going around. And I felt truly and sincerely that if you want to represent this district, you need to live in the district. I do live in the district. I live in North Baltimore County in Glen Arm. That is still in the district. Our district is diverse. It is like a microcosm of Maryland. We have Howard County, Baltimore City, and Baltimore County. So we go from agricultural to metropolitan to urban. Thank you very much. Leslie Grant for Congress.com.
Thank you. Dr. Mark Gosnell.
Thank you, and thank you, Reverend, for having us here, and all of you for coming out. I'd like to give a little background. As you know, we all have taken a different path to come here today, and that path will tell you quite a bit about us as people. I was born in Baltimore City. I was raised in Dundalk, Maryland. My father also worked at Eastern Stainless Steel, an industry that it no longer provides jobs, and he passed away when I was 9. So I was raised by a single mother. I was raised by a single mother who was only able to do that because of help. She had help from Social Security. She had help from our church. She still volunteered. She still found a way to become involved. We helped with Meals on Wheels. I went with her to Washington, D.C. to march for the Equal Rights Amendment, and she really inspired me as a person. I was very blessed in that way to still have her with us. What else did I learn? Well, I learned there's a lot of difference in public education. When we moved to Pennsylvania, we came from a district in Dundalk that the public schools were not well funded. In Pennsylvania, they had pools in their school. I'd never seen such a thing. I felt behind. I felt embarrassed, and I took a while to catch up. I was blessed to be able to go to University of Delaware and graduated with honors before going to medical school. I've taken on a lot of debt, and I think that is very common. Unfortunately, the debt that is required to get an even entry-level job now is unacceptable, and one thing that has forced me to reconsider what I'm doing for a living. It really comes down to a decision of a calling, and that's what I went into medicine to do. I'm the director of intensive care medicine at Harbor Hospital. I've been asked by people in the crowd, well, where have you been? Why aren't you asking about this neighborhood? Why aren't your representatives here? And I wasn't a candidate, I wasn't a politician, but I did feel a calling to serve you as a physician, and I serve a population that is very poorly represented. Let me tell you what I saw today. There were 3 admissions last night because of an overdose of IV drugs. We had to put them on a respirator despite their recovery from Narcan. I had to take care of a patient who was too cold and had no place to live. And I decided to see how politicians were approaching these problems, and we got donut holes. I had patients in my office that could not afford their medication, and they had to choose between food and medicine. I had a patient who decided not to be a full resuscitation because of the bills that she was going to take. I entered this race a year ago because I wanted to make a difference now and then and now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anthony Carter, Sr.
Hi, my name is Anthony Carter. Can you hear me? I come from a different path than some of these people. Some came the same path. Yes, pretty much like you. I grew up in East Baltimore. I come from a very well-educated family. My grandfather was in the South. He sent 7 girls to prestigious colleges. I grew up listening to Beethoven. My mother was a classical pianist. But she struggled when she moved into Baltimore. We grew up in Abbey Court, down by Dunbar. And My father, he was in and out of jobs, and she struggled by herself. And it was tough for her raising 5 kids. So she was one of the first black women in that community to buy a house across North Avenue because you couldn't live across North Avenue as African Americans. And we have forgotten that. But she did. And she did it by herself. And she raised 5 kids, 3 boys. I have 2 older brothers that was lost to the city. One became an alcoholic. He had a brain tumor. Dr. Ben Carson did surgery on him. My father, he drank a lot. Dr. Ben Carson did surgery on him. So another brother, he was out in the streets. I'm the youngest. And I saw all this turmoil. And I didn't want to see my mother hurt anymore. My role model is my mother. And I saw her as a social worker. She was a teacher. And Miss Carter, everyone knows my mother. Before there was these gentlemen up here, she knew Perrin J. Mitchell. She knew Barbara Mikulski. She knew all of them before they were senators, congressmen. But my mother didn't like the limelight. Carters, we don't brag about what we do. We in the back, and we do the hard work. And I did the hard work. While everybody was in their office talking about what they did, I saved lives in Baltimore City. I saw the gunshot victims. I saw young men getting slaughtered on the street. And I was there for them. I was there for the families. And Baltimore needs some people like me and like yourself that will fight for the young people of Baltimore. We need people that will fight, and the children getting somebody there that will work hard for them. And we need more young people in this audience. If what we're doing is working, I don't see it. We don't see the young people that's going to be the future here. And we need more young people to participate in this process. And we are failing them. Look around in the audience. If everything is working like everybody says, how come we don't have young people here?
Thank you
How
very
come we have all
much.
the murderers? Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. We will have questions from the audience. We ask the attendees to drop questions in a basket, so we will pull a couple of questions for you guys to answer. The next set of questions will be based on themes. Everybody won't be asked the same question. We're going to go to Senator Larry Young first, but before Mr. Young speaks, one quick question that's just a yes or no. We're going to start with Delegate Branch. Candidates do not have to live in the district. So if you filed for a candidacy for this district, you do not have to live in the district. Yes or no, do you live in the Congressional District 7?
Yes, absolutely.
The question is, do you live in District 7? Candidates for congressional districts do not have to live in the district. Yes or no, do you live in the district?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
No, I live in East Baltimore by Morgan State University.
Yes.
Absolutely yes.
Yes. Yes for 50 years.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Question. According to the polls, crime is the biggest issue confronting city residents today. How would you leverage the position as a member of Congress with the largest amount of Baltimore in it to support efforts to reduce crime in the city?
Is that directed or everybody?
Good evening once again. 3 things: housing, transportation, and of course public safety as it relates to the Department of Defense. And let me tell you why I chose those 3 things. For the last 15 years, what I've noticed is that we have to talk about real serious issues. There are constituents that I met, kids who go home and they wore the same clothes they wore for the past 5 days. They're not clean. We've got kids that are going home to parents that are either drug addicted or have crime issues related to their past where they can't find jobs. We also have folks who are so frustrated with the life that they live that we as civil people come to them when they're living in an uncivilized world. So their patience is super, super low. The only way you change a community on the congressional level, remember this is a congressional race, is to put funding in those three categories that I gave you. Because when you change the face of a community, the community will change the way they think. They will look for opportunities that exist, and more folks will come into our city to help. But when you have folks that say, I don't want to be in Baltimore, look at that vacant house. I don't want to be in Baltimore or Baltimore County or Baltimore or Howard County because look at the crime rate of opioid addiction. That's the true issue that we're dealing with. As a congressperson, we have to make sure that the funding gets to these federal programs so that when the mayor and the governor make good decisions to be able to allocate funds, it goes to those public safety and housing and transportation initiatives. Game over. There's no reason to give anyone a hoopla scenario or some dream. I'm sorry, I'll stop. This is just really in my heart to share that with you. And that's all I have to say.
Because of the time, I'm going to just take the first five, and then the next question can be asked. So we're going this way. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so crime. In order to reduce crime, we have got to create new opportunities. As long as folks have hopelessness, that hopelessness will turn into apathy and withdrawal, and then that will turn into animosity, and the strained relationship with law enforcement and opportunities that are here from the federal, state, and local governments will persist. People don't believe in the system. The coming and successor generations, they don't believe that there's anything out here for them. And so if it's between food, clothing, and shelter or no crime, food, clothing, and shelter with crime and murder will occur. And that's what's been happening. Now, I'll say this real quick because I think I'm getting a signal. The money that comes from the federal government, around the corner from my house, had $180 million spent in two schools, Forest Park and Calvin Rodwell. They had people from Appalachian Mountains, Eastern Shore, West Virginia coming to do that work. If we created and made subsidies, the statutory legislation that associated the labor with the money coming into the district for the people that live in the district, we would solve the problems for the district.
Thank you. And I know it's a short period of time, but in an interest of time,
It would be useful if you guys gave us a time limit.
that's what I'm getting ready to say.
So, okay.
If you could give us your answer in about a minute and a half, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When opportunity goes up, crime goes down. And where there is no opportunity, crime goes through the ceiling. A couple of quick things. When I was coming up, everything that happened back in the day was not all bad. There was such a thing as apprenticeship programs because all of us were not going into the military, all of us were not going into college, and there was a core of young people, male and female, that needed to find skills. And so we created apprenticeship programs where you learned how to be an electrician or how to be a carpenter or how to be a nurse's assistant. You got in on the ground level and you had a job. And as you continued to grow in that job, you were able to take care of your family as a young 20 or 25-year-old, and you just got better and better and better in terms of your savings and educating yourself and doing other things. If that were not there, a lot of people would have gone straight, not into the military to college, but straight to jail. The other thing I think is that we have to have a $15 minimum wage for entry-level positions. You got squeegee kids on the corner because they can't start at what the minimum wage is, or they won't start. And then the third thing is that we've got to work with intervention programs. I mentioned Mothers of Murdered Sons and Daughters. I mentioned the other organizations like the Ceasefire. We've got to work with them and embrace them in our community and give them the kind of support I think they need.
Thank you. Mr.
I think
Conca.
I'll be less than a minute and a half because I pretty much agree with what the first three said. I'll add two other points. But they also mentioned the importance of money, and I agree. I'm a finance professor. I understand money. So I would be best positioned to bring the money to the district that the district needs. Now, the two other points I'd add is at the federal level, I would look at gun control legislation. It's We have 30 to 40,000 deaths a year. Britain and Japan, they're literally in the dozens. So we do need to take a look at the laws. And not only for gun laws, but we also need to take a look at drug laws. This is a tricky topic, but the more decriminalization of drugs would take away the incentive to push the drugs and to rob and commit crimes, along with the other ideas that previous speakers have mentioned of providing opportunity. Education is obviously a big part of it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Hill.
Yes, I'm Terry Hill again. So I agree. And here's the point. We have spent generations having policies that were designed to keep poor people poor, designed to break families apart, and to keep the oppressed oppressed. And now we act like we're surprised because the chickens have come home to roost. So it is not as simple as just having jobs because we've stripped hope out of communities. It is not as simple as just having transportation, although all those things are critical and important, because we have more people, young people and old, living with depression, living with anxiety, and despite the president telling you it's the best economy ever, we know that it's not. And until we are willing to look at the entirety of the problem and address it in all of its manifestations, we will not come to a solution. And it comes from private prisons, okay? It comes from not wanting people to have the opportunity because we otherize everything. And it becomes a criminalization, as you say, of drugs and other things when we ought to be doing better. So, from the federal level, it is about putting more money in, but it's about putting money into the right places. And what I do, and the reason that I was talking about my background is because it's about leveling up. It's about looking strategically at the root problems and dealing with those. That's what I do. That's what I do as a legislator. That's what I do as a physician, and that's what I will do as your congresswoman.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. We're going to shift gears. I want to talk about accountability and integrity. I don't think it's far-fetched that, this election season, a number of politicians in this state have been charged and others have been sentenced for everything from bribery to mail fraud and other crimes associated with the office that they hold. There have been a number of questions of some of you about your past actions, and we would like for you to clarify some of those about your past. And also, I want to try to get to what are some of the good practices. I want to start with you, Senator Carter. The seat you currently hold was held by an individual who was charged with a crime and now sits in a federal penitentiary. Tell me what you learned from that, and tell me what it says about your colleagues who are also from the legislature. What should they have been, what lessons should you have learned, and what should all of you have learned who are currently sitting in the legislature?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Sorry. Don't put my time up yet. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Can the
All right.
timer restart the time here, please? Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to try to talk loud. Can you hear me okay? Okay, first of all, I want to say that I've actually served in the House of Delegates and been elected 4 terms there and then once in the Senate, and I've never been charged with anything. So I don't have issues in the past or carry any baggage personally.
But tell me what you learned from that.
What I've learned from it is that there is a culture in politics at the local, state, and federal level that really is a culture that fosters corruption, and that starts with the very way that we are even expected to be elected. That starts with what we're doing right now. That starts with the fact that the pundits and the media assess the value of a candidate based on how many millionaires they can raise funds from. And so the first thing that we need to do to change this system is change the campaign. We need campaign finance reform. We need public financing of campaigns. That is the absolute first thing. And the second thing that we need to do, frankly, it's about all of us. I mean, what we need to do is move beyond what people say when they're running for office and look at what they've done in their lives. Look at who they are before they get elected to public office. Too often, people that have in the past been elected did not have any serious careers or other things that they had necessarily done. Too often, the Democrat machine, and when I got elected in 2003, I was the first person in about 47 years to get elected without the support locally of the Democratic machine. Often they selected their candidates, and they didn't select them based on the candidate's value or character. They selected them based on who they could control.
I'm going to have to say thank you because I want to go to somebody else.
So we've got to move beyond
Okay?
the people
Thank
that,
you.
that are easily controlled. Thank
Mr.
you.
Higginbotham, I want to go to you. One of the reasons why I want to go to you is you're self-financing your campaign. What does that say about the electoral process? That you've got to put up your own money to make this race work?
Says the process is broken, and I agree with Senator Carter that we need to have public financing. I would support that legislation. I think that needs to occur. I agree.
But you think you're going to get that done in Congress?
Well, I'd like to try. I'd like to try. It's going to be hard, but I'd like to try. But Thurgood Marshall was right. He said the process is distorted. It favors the rich. The political process favors the wealthy. And we need to change that with public financing. That, I think, is the way to go. That we can get done. But until we do that, I felt it was necessary to self-finance at least half of the campaign. I'm raising private money as well, but I also believed it was worth self-financing.
So how should people perceive that?
I think they should perceive it as I'm a person who saved up my money, and I'm a person who doesn't like to ask people for money. So what I did was, if I'm going to ask people for money, they need to know I'm in the game too. I'm putting my hard-earned money up too, so that they know we're both in it together.
I know we have 3 doctors up here, and I know that many times you go to your friends and you go to your colleagues who are in the medical profession. I want to start with you, Dr. Hill, first of all. Tell me, does that influence how you vote on matters?
No, so to get to the point, I agree that we need campaign finance report. I loaned myself $1,000 when I ran for the General Assembly. I took that money and loaned it back for this. That's all I've put up. If our finances are out now, we're not making the $400,000, let alone the $500,000 for this campaign that some people say it's worth. We're barely going to be able to make $80,000. So we're depending on word of mouth. We're depending on my record in this community of the past 35 and 40 years and my 5 years in the General Assembly. The problem is that people have to do the work. And you all are here, but too many voters don't want to do the work, and it's easy enough to go online and find out somebody's voting record, find out what bills they sponsored, find out what they fight for. So yes, I am looking to my colleagues because I've got to find the money. I'm looking to the citizens because I've got to find the money. Otherwise, you can't get the message out.
Thank you. Gossel, I want to talk to you about that, and I'll come to you, Leslie, after this. First and foremost, last time I checked, people who do the type of medicine you do are not poor.
Well, so...
Yeah, go ahead.
So I actually bought the house that my in-laws grew up in, and we helped care for them in their older age. And I actually am still paying off medical school loans. So I actually am not as rich as it would have been if I had gotten a full ride. But I am not struggling, and I would never say to anyone that I'm uncomfortable. I am funding this on my own. As such, it's difficult to get the word out. As I said, I started this race a year ago because I was not satisfied. I think that the open race as it is now always made me wonder, are these candidates saying they were satisfied with the way things were? I was not a year ago, and I entered with that intention all the time, and I have tried to make momentum as much as I can. Now, friends are friends, and they support me, but money is money also, and they're not willing to give up their money to support me more than
Appreciate
just
that.
a few
Let me go to the candidate sitting next to you.
Sure.
You have a unique specialty in dentistry
And speech and language
and
pathology.
speech language pathology. How, if a company or corporation that has a new device comes to you and they go, I want you to support this, I'm assuming that you take that Hippocratic oath as well and you say you're gonna do well. But tell me, should that influence the political side if you happen to be in Congress?
No, can you hear me? Okay, no, it should not. It should not influence any elected officials' decision-making process. I'm happy you're asking about ethics and transparency. I first want to say that every candidate who filed with the FEC had a deadline of January 6th for their personal financial disclosure. Even though I have a small grassroots campaign, I was one of the few candidates that did meet that deadline. And I'm very, very happy to say that I'm able to walk with clear transparency for everyone regarding the finances that in my campaign that I am primarily self-supporting. So there are laws, sunshine laws, that prevent individuals from promoting a product that they may use or medical device. Those are relatively new laws, but they prevent us from reaping the gains of the manufacturer's funding that they provide us by imposing that on our patients who see us. So no, we are not bound, nor should we be. We have ethical requirements in terms of non-maleficence and beneficence toward our patients.
Appreciate that. Mr. Mfume, you know this question is going to come to you about accountability because, of course, there was a article that was written by an individual you worked for at the NAACP, and I believe that you disagreed with that. Help the audience sift through the why and the how of why that is irrelevant or is relevant during this election cycle.
Thank you very much. When I came to the NAACP, it had a $5 million deficit. I gave up my safe seat in the Congress, asked Elijah if he would run, and I stepped out on faith because I thought it was important to try to do what I could to save the nation's oldest and largest civil rights organization. Most people at the time thought I had lost my mind, but for me, it really was about public service. Julian Bond and I, who you are indirectly referencing, are two strong-willed individuals who didn't see things the same way all the time. There's a part of me that will not let me speak ill of a dead person, so I will not go into how I felt about that, except that we saw things differently. And in that process, he did the board, and I ran the organization. I did such a good job in the first 5 years that after that, I was given a new contract, awarded one, with a salary increase, and I finished out my term on that. Now, his recollection of things and my recollection of things obviously are two different perspectives. There are a number of people in this audience here now who are part of that NAACP, who understood what it was like to fight internally and who understood also why it was important to always uphold the banner of the association. So when my contract ended in October of 2004, I'd indicated in August of that year that I wouldn't be coming back. I'd gotten word that Paul Sarbanes might be leaving his seat, and I thought that maybe I should at least offer myself for that election. So I notified people in August that I would not seek a new contract in October. And I've read, like you, his recollections of that. I just happen to disagree. And I know one thing, that when it's all said and done, the National Organization of Women, who reviewed all the other matters, at the end of that concluded that they would not only stay out of the race, that they would get in the race.
Thank you,
and they
Mr.
endorsed me
Mfume.
wholeheartedly. Thank you very much.
Okay, my next question is very similar to one that's been submitted by one of the community members. Just today, on my way into work, I saw that a number of signs had been defaced of at least one of the candidates. But I'm also aware that there have been signs taken down by certain candidates, signs, ripped out of the ground. My question and the question of this community member, if it's been brought to your attention from a source that someone in your camp are doing activities of this sort, how would you handle it? I'll start with Mr. Conker, Dr. Conker.
Well, that's an easy one for me to answer. I'm not only am I self-funding my campaign, I'm pretty much the sole person on my staff, so I don't have anybody to. But,
30 seconds.
But let me tell you what I would do. I would fire them forthright. Actually, I wouldn't fire them forthright. First, I'd ask them, "What the heck are you doing?" And then I would demand that they apologize to the other candidate and make it right, because people do make mistakes. And I did have, in the previous campaign, people putting up signs for me when I ran for the Board of Education. We never had any problems, and I don't expect, well, I know I'm not going to have any problems in this campaign.
So thank you. And I'm not just talking about signs being in the wrong location. I'm talking about signs being defaced. Senator Carter, I'll go to you next.
Thank you. It's very interesting because I'm a big believer in signs and visibility. That's the way that I first got indoctrinated into politics. Of course, if I knew that someone was doing something, I would admonish them not to do it. I don't think that we have to cheat to win. I think that we win on my record and on our policies. So
Thank you.
I don't support that.
Thank you. Delegate Branch.
Yeah, I would first talk to them, because sometimes you get workers and they think they're doing the right thing, they think they're helping you, and at the same time they're killing you. So I would certainly talk to them first and to see why they did that, and then later give them an opportunity to go back out and work more. But if they defaced or start stealing signs or anything like that, again, after being warned, they're off my campaign.
Thank you. Mr. Robb.
So I've not run a race before for public office, and I've been advised all sorts of slick tactics from people who are frustrated and want to support, including go after, former Congressman Mfume on his record on women, including take up people's signs. We refuse categorically in this race to go negative. We are positive people. I actually believe that's public.
Let's be respectful of the candidate, please.
I'm being respectful, and I respect him. I refuse to make this into a race that is hinged on negativity. I think that what I have done is something that is for the community, and what he has done, what she has done. These are the merits about which we ought to select the person who becomes our next congressman. The last thing I'll say is this. My signs have been defaced majorly. I have it on tape where someone drove a truck through my sign. And when we saw this, I actually talked with some of the other candidates about this, and they said, this is the stuff of races. Sometimes, as Mr. Branch said, they think they're doing the right thing. They're not. Let's keep it above the board.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Mfume.
Funny, as you should ask that. My wife and I were driving home the other night and actually saw people ripping down my signs on Liberty Road. Here's what you got to do. Campaign workers take on the personality of who they are working for. And what I do, we begin a campaign by saying these are the do's and these are the don'ts. I don't wait until it happens and then admonish people, because if it happens after that, I just really don't want their work on our campaign. But I think the example that we set as candidates from the day we get in oftentimes derives or describes how people who are working for us act. It's wrong. I've never run a dirty campaign in my life. I've been running since 1979, and I will never go out and find myself doing that, because that's just not who I am.
Okay. My next question I'd like each of you to answer. If you can answer in 30 seconds, I'd appreciate it. Maybe 45. So based on your conversations with the attendees here, we understand that you're representing constituents from 3 jurisdictions. But based on your conversations with attendees here, Baltimore County residents, what is their number 1 concern, and how will you go about achieving it? And give me your best fresh idea, no old stale stuff, your best fresh idea to achieve it. Let's start from Mr. Baker.
Title. T. Dan Baker, progressive candidate. Title I needs to be equal across the board, no matter where your zip code is, what neighborhood you're in. Education is absolutely key. And without that, I think we really are heading in the wrong direction.
Thank you. Delegate Branch.
I agree. I think Title I should be even everywhere, every zip code. I don't see it being done in any uneven way. It should be done quite fairly.
Okay, again, your conversation with a constituent here today or in Baltimore County, what's their concern and how you would address it?
Give me the question again.
Based on a conversation with one of the constituents here today during the mix and mingle or another Baltimore County resident, what did they say is their major concern, and how would you address it as a congressperson?
Well, I mixed and mingled, but no one here gave me their major concern.
Okay,
or a
thank you.
concern.
Okay, guys. Senator Carter.
Thank you. I would say the same thing. I talked to many people before this forum started, but no one gave me a
Did
specific
you
issue.
ask? Did anybody ask? Go on.
Well, no, I actually did, and I was about to get there. What I heard was that there was concern about crime, and that the crime from the city was spilling out to the county. I want to say that this is one region, one district, and that people live in intersectionality, first of all. And so you can't talk about one thing in a vacuum. You can't talk about crime in isolation without talking about the school funding, the opportunities, the youth opportunities, the basic, keeping the areas clean that people live. But we're talking about disinvestment. And so when people talk about crime spilling out from the city to the county, what is really being talked about is the disinvestment that's happened in so many neighborhoods in the city, which caused so many people to move to the county. And so what we can do beyond just talk about it is actually use our leverage and our position to fight for equity, fight for equality for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
This audience, you have made my point. That's why we don't have any young people in this audience. They're turned off. They don't want to participate. We're talking about signs. We're talking about things that the communities are not concerned about, the violence and everything else. And we're still talking about one day the signs will be eliminated totally. And that's why we had these problems. The congresswomen that won the last election, they won it on social media. It's going to take care of itself like the written press. And we're sitting here talking about signs. We're back in the 80s and 90s. The signs will be gone. Social media, these young people will take over. It will, the money that they put in.
Can you answer the question?
Yes, but first of all, you
have
ignored
15
me
seconds.
and you went past me. The signs and the way we elect a politician is going to be a waste of time. The young people are going to come on social media and the money is going to be a waste of time. They're going to balance the scale.
And how would you handle that as a representative, your
how
issue with
I would
social
handle
media?
that and how I'm handling it now. Addressing all on social media and going into different communities in that cyber world and going directly. The signs are not an issue anymore. Most people ignore them. My sister talked about the signs are so big she can't even see traffic.
Okay. Thank you.
It's going to die out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Gosnell.
Thank you. So, Dr. Gosnell again, and I did talk to a number of you, and thank you for your input. First was, who are you, and and where have you been? And you should know more about this community if you want our vote. And what I said was, of course, thank you for telling me this. And one of the problems that was mentioned is just the decay in the businesses in this mall. And the fact that we can't attract businesses here and keep them in the area. And what I decided to talk about is, from a congressional level, how can I draw businesses to this area? Well, I can try to reduce some of the taxes that might be burdening the rental income that they're forcing these businesses to take, but I can also improve the security of you as you come and shop. So if there are not good security systems here, we can make mobile units. If there's not good lighting, we can improve the lighting in areas of the mall. And that's part of a multidisciplinary plan. Actually, as you learn about these things, you will all talk about how each factor into the other, both security, jobs, and opportunity.
Thank you. And we only have about 20 minutes left, so I apologize. We'll keep going down quickly. 45 minutes, please. 45 seconds, please.
Thank you. Thank you for, I'd love the 45 minutes. Thank you very much for asking that question, because I did have an excellent, engaging conversation with a youth representative, a young man named Terrell, who's a graduate of UMBC, and he asked me so many excellent probing questions. I really thought he was from the media. One of the questions was on education, another on criminal justice, and then another on sentencing equity related to drugs. And I said, I'm really happy you asked me that question also, because in the past, I served on the National African American Drug Policy Coalition, and we advocated, number one, this is before the 2010 white paper on opioids that came out of the Obama administration. We were advocating for opioids to be recognized as a healthcare problem, a public health problem. And number two, thank you, that there needed to be sentencing equity between powder cocaine and crack cocaine. And crack cocaine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if anybody does not want to answer, we can move past you. Professor Higginbotham.
Several people mentioned their health coverage to me, and this is America. We're a rich country. Everybody should have health coverage. We should make sure that, as a congressperson, we should make sure that we work hard to make sure that everybody has health coverage. For me, I would work on the Affordable Care Act, expanding that, giving a public option, increasing the money, make sure everybody gets covered.
Thank you.
Terry Hill, thank you. So I spoke with several people, both from the county and a couple of people from the city here tonight, and they all said the same thing. It was crime, it was education, it was housing. And I agree very much with Senator Carter, they all intermingle. And again, one of the things that I see over and over again is that we don't have the behavioral health supports, we don't have them in the community, we don't have them in the schools that we need to make sure that people who are living or dealing with trauma, whether it's overt physical trauma or it's psychological trauma or it's just feeling like they're not getting ahead. There's a reason why the greatest increase in overdose of heroin are white males 45 to 55.
Thank you.
Tonight, the issue was crime, and that was addressed by the very first question from Senator Young, where we need to give more opportunity, decriminalization, gun control laws. At other forums, I've been pleasantly surprised to hear people mention climate change, and that's something we need to commit to the Paris Climate Accord.
Okay, and we're looking for your best fresh idea in 45 seconds.
Well, I'm going to tell you what they told me. They're worried about crime. The murder rate in Baltimore County doubled in the last 12 months. We can't overlook that. Crime for rape and burglaries are going up in the county. We can't overlook that. Parents have said they're worried about new school construction to replace the old schools that have been around for so long, and air conditioning units and heating units for students to learn in. And they're worried about being overtaxed. The rain tax, the this tax, the that tax. At the end of the day, it hurts your ability to be able to take care of your family. And they've seen their property values go down after they've raised their own children, got them off and in their own life, and now the property that they bought with the hope long ago that it would be sustaining continues to lose value.
Thank you. Mr. Robb.
So, crime, agreed, is the issue. Here's what I do about it. I built a 350 megawatt production facility of solar power panels in San Diego. I want to do the exact same thing here. We can have a holistic approach that deals with the environment, creates jobs. The more opportunities we create, the less crime there will be. The other thing I'll say is this: when large-scale money comes from the federal government, we have got to make certain we peg that to local labor. If you peg big money that comes from the feds to local laborers, we create jobs and we create a healthy economy. You have a healthy economy, you have a healthy public safety circumstance.
Thank you. Mr. Spikes?
Yes, ma'am. When I go and meet constituents, the top two things that I hear are crime and jobs. I can only share with the crowd what I've already done for years. We've done the Congressional Job Fair, which we've hosted for years, but we've brought in all type of jobs, but most importantly, making sure we had apprenticeship jobs that are there. Also, this morning I was with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development over in Montgomery Mall, and one of the craziest things that they said was that, Mr. Spikes, we have like $1.2 million budget. He said, but we only get $500,000 from the Department of Defense. We have to raise the rest. To me, that's crazy. So on the congressional level, because I find myself a lot educating our community as to what a congressman or woman can do, we need to make sure that there's more money put into the Department of Justice so that we can have those type of monies get to people, and also the Department of Labor so that more money can go to apprenticeships so that we have jobs in our community. That's what you can do as a congressperson.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you would do differently from the esteemed Congressman Cummings to have an impact locally or nationally? If so, provide a specific example of a different direction you would take. Start from this end back.
T. Dan Baker, Progressive Democrat. I'd focus more on climate change, and the way I would do it is with a two-pronged approach, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. Objective of establish the first all-renewable electric supplied municipality in the United States here in District 7. Columbia, safest or best place to live in the United States, Money Magazine 2016, 2019, safest place to live in the United States. They've already got renewable energy for the municipal stuff. The idea is bringing the residents in as well. How do you do this? You recruit un- and underemployed out of areas that are depressed. You train them, you recruit them, you train them, you transport them, and either you have green or brownfield manufacturing facilities for solar, wind turbine, systems conversion and installation. We have to focus on this as a top priority going forward. Thank you.
I understand you have 45 seconds.
One of the things I would do just differently is work with the county executives and mayor of Baltimore to talk about ways in which I could help with crime. I lost a grandson not long ago, 2017. He was shot more than 12 times. So that's my focal point today, is making sure that money can come to the city and by way of going to treatment for the addicted, opioids, for all of those in those areas, and making sure that we're able to bring the money back to funnel it into the cities to help with those kind of treatments. That might help with some of the killings that we're having now, some of the causes of crimes that we have here. So that is one of the things that I would do differently, working with the county execs and mayors.
Thank you. I've already been in a position to do some things differently than the former Congressman Elijah Cummings, and I would continue to do those. One of the things that I feel very strongly about is this concept of investment in every individual and community, and this concept of equality and equity. Before Freddie Gray happened, I was a champion for law enforcement reform, and even a young man out here in Baltimore County, Christopher Brown, that was murdered by a law enforcement officer. I sponsored a bill that passed and became law called Christopher's Law. The congressman believed very much in enhancing private institutions and the police force at Hopkins while the city is dying. And I did not agree with that, which is why I didn't support allowing a private institution to have a police force when the city has so many needs that are not being addressed, and Hopkins, which is what I'm talking about, doesn't pay taxes. And so those are the kinds of things. I think that the difference is that I believe that we focus at the front end at prevention and lifting people up as opposed to fixing problems with more policing.
What I would do is before he was born, I saw a thriving black communities in the 19th century, Greenwood, Black Wall Street. I would take us back to what worked before he was born, creating more entrepreneurs like Mr. Patterson that created the automobile. Take us back to a gentleman at IBM a black man created the first computer, personal computer. We were inventors. We invented the traffic light. Everything. A black woman created laser surgery. We have took entrepreneurship out of our community. We are consumers, and we have government jobs that don't reinvest into our communities. That's the truth. It's the sad truth. Government jobs will not invest us in our community. We need to become entrepreneurs again, where we can invest in our communities like others do in Canton and Fells Point. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would agree. For the Hopkins, I was not in favor of arming Hopkins officers. I don't think more guns are going to be the answer here. We need better training for these officers on when to use force and when to stop using force. We have too much heavy-handed police work in this district. I think there's better education. I would work with the incoming mayor. I've already emailed them to try to get them on board with whatever I can do. I also think other things would be done differently, and if he was still here, he probably would get around to it. I think that I could help with the lower prescription bill. I think that there are improvements. Even though it does carry his name, I would want to improve it. I think that by doing so, it'll make it more affordable for actual people who are going to get these medications. It's too expensive. Thank you.
So I have to first answer your question by saying there's so much that I agree with the former Congressman Cummings about his support of prescription drug, lowering the cost of student loan forgiveness programs, and looking at the indebtedness of our new professionals, investing in the community and investing in healthcare. He was a consensus builder. What I would do differently or enhance is connecting all of the communities of the 7th District by engaging in town hall meetings across the district and coming home he came home every night, but coming home and having town halls in the areas that didn't see as much of the connection of the various aspects of the community.
I too agree with a lot of things that Congressman Cummings did, but I think I believe in a bold new vision, and I think we need to take a lot of money that we're wasting overseas and bring it back home, rebuild our urban areas. So I would like to see Baltimore get a whole lot of money from the defense, from overseas money, bring it on home and rebuild our cities.
Terry Hill. So I also agreed with a lot of the things that Congressman Cummings did. I think that times have shown, though, that our problems are shifting, and some of the solutions that we thought would work aren't working as well as we might. So a couple of things that I'd be looking at is addressing financial credit. There's no reason why the loan, the prime rate should be less than 2%, and people are paying 18, 25, 27, 28% on their credit card. Doesn't make sense. I would also look at healthcare reform differently. Right now, it doesn't matter. All the discussion we're having, they're still going to make money. It's just we're arguing about who's going to pay, but they're still making money. And when we talk about addiction, where all of our approaches are from the supply down, how do we decrease the number of pills? Let's talk about the demand side. How do we fill the void in people, I was getting to in the previous question, so that they're not looking for an escape. They're not looking to get high. They're not looking. So how do we fill those voids with opportunity and promise? Those are the things that I would be focused on. It's just a shift of focus. It's not a change in goals, and it's not a change in passion.
Two things. One, I've already mentioned, I donate half the $174,000 to charitable organizations in District 7 and try to get other congresspeople to do the same thing. We need to get back to what our founding fathers said was to serve as a sense of duty, not as a way to increase your paycheck. The second thing I do is I'd hold a press conference. I'd wear this same tie. It's a Navy tie bought in the academy. It has two words on it besides Navy. It says honor and courage. And I think I'm the only Vietnam veteran on this stage. And I'd hold a press conference. And I'd ask the president, I'd ask him respectfully, but I'd say, Mr. President, when I was in Vietnam, where was your honor? Where was your courage? And I would challenge him every day between now and Election Day.
When I left my safe seat in Congress to go and try to save the NAACP, I asked Elijah to keep two programs intact, the How to Pay for College seminar and the jobs fair. He did that. They are still operating now, even in his death. I would continue those. One of the things that I would do a little differently in this day and age that we live in, I try to do an electronic town hall meeting so that everybody from across the district at once could share in that, express their views, hear the differences of each other and the opinions of each other, so that the white community is listening to the black community and the county community is listening to the city community, and that we have a full family dialogue in the district. And that's very simple to do these days. Some congressional offices are already doing it. That's what I would do slightly different.
So I believe that opportunity for young people and how we engage young people has to incorporate multi-platform media. And everybody has a story. I would create a core of young people to interview their elders. And by preserving the stories, we would actually feed these $1 trillion companies like Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix that are paying lots of money. We create opportunities, we beat out crime, and we'd engage the young with the old. And I believe that Congressman Elijah Cummings would do something like that had that been a part of his era. But we have to solve problems that don't yet exist. And same spirit, new idea.
Two things that I would do, and I actually had these conversations with the congressman before he passed away. Number one, I felt as if though we need to do more for veteran housing. We had a lot of veterans who were not able to really find housing. I would actually do a veterans fair where we would make sure that not only could you address housing, but PTSD, also reunite with their families, and most importantly, helping them find jobs, doing that. Number two, I would also put more energy into our district as it relates to weatherization jobs, because a lot of people do not know that a lot of skills that are needed for the weatherization jobs are three things. You have HVAC, you have electrician, and you have carpentry, which pay more in the weatherization field than coal mining. So I would do that. Plus, we have vacancies, like over 15,000 vacant homes in our district. That would then allow more jobs, and the blight that we all see would decay. That's my answer.
Well, guess what? We're almost at the end. And I get the last question for all of you. And you want one more question, Larry?
Just one more. 10 seconds. The election's coming. What nominee for the Democratic Party do you recommend to your citizens? Starting with you.
Say it one more time, Larry.
Who would you suggest we vote for in the primary coming up for president?
I don't have an answer. I'm still looking like everybody else.
10 seconds. Elizabeth Warren.
Whoever the Democratic nominee is to beat Donald Trump.
I'll second that. I'm interested in the candidate who can best beat Donald Trump, and the polls indicate that's Amy Klobuchar. That's what the polls say.
If we do our job and support whoever the nominee is, we will beat Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is the great uniter, so whoever is the Democratic nominee will be my person. No question about it.
Get out the vote. Defeat Donald Trump. Whomever is a nominee of the Democratic Party, we all need to support. We need to save this democracy. We are losing all that we have fought so hard for.
Well, I was hoping Michelle Obama would run. But I'll vote for whoever's running against Trump.
The safe choice for me is Joe Biden because of the blue-collar workers in the Midwest that he can win. I'm taking a look at Bloomberg because his recent investment in Greenwood, how he's going to rebuild that black community that was burned down. So I am looking at him closely.
Thank you. I believe we need a political revolution and a political evolution. But that being said, vote for who you want, but then vote for the Democrat against Trump, period.
I'm a Joe Biden man, period.
Speaker.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders, because he got the most progressive agenda platform and his focus on climate, which again has to be a very high priority, or the other is not. Thanks.
All right, now I'm at the end, almost. We get one last question. I know most of you know that if you've done any research on this race, the last race that Elijah Cummings won, there were over 60,000 votes. I'm going to guess there's not going to be 60,000 votes in this next election. I'd like for you to tell me who are your core constituents? Is it men, women, young, old? And I'd like to also know, because I'm going to just tell you, I've been watching weather reports. And let me just tell you, if you look far out, February the 4th is likely to snow. So let's go in the middle with Mr. Higginbotham. Real quickly, who's your core constituents? Tell me, men, women, what?
Men and women, but those who value education are my core constituents.
Okay, pass it over to the lady next to you. Who are your core constituents?
Leslie Grant for Congress, first of all. My core constituents are Democrats and a lot of folks in North Baltimore County.
All right, pass that over to Delegate Hill.
My core constituents are anybody who believe that we need solutions to our problems, that we can't keep doing stupid, and it's time to get serious, that we need to put a doctor in the House and get this thing taken care of, and we need a woman in Congress for Maryland.
Tell me who your core constituents are.
All right, I agree with the doctor in the House part. My core constituents, anyone who's open to new ideas, new leadership, we need some fresh voices here.
I got 10,000.
No, I want you. Go ahead.
I got 10,000 votes when I ran for the Board of Education, Baltimore County. So start with those 10,000, plus all the other forums I've been going to. It's a very low turnout. There's probably the winner is going to be between 10 and 15,000 votes. So I encourage everyone in here to vote because you're going to be voting with a power of 5.
Very good. Who are your core constituents?
The whole hardworking people of Baltimore City that work every day to pay bills and take care of their children. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mfume.
I'd like to think that my core constituents are people of faith who get up every day believing that it can be made better than the yesterday, and who believe that they, by the simple eloquence of their example, can do that.
Delegate Carter.
Senator, my core constituents are people that want a fighter and a champion, not just people that have flowery language and say good things and have good ideas. We need someone that can push legislation and move us forward. So my core constituents are those people, all of you that believe in a progressive leader.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rob, come on.
People who, my core constituents, people who care about the future, people who care about their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and successor generations, people who are against corruption. I need them to band with me, stand up, vote for me February 4th, Sophia Robb for Congress.
Doug Branch.
I have a church-based group of people, and as well as the working man and women.
Spikes.
Anybody that believes in Harry Spikes, that's who are my core constituents.
Is that 5 people, 10 people?
Everybody in my district, spikesforcongress.com. Learn more.
Very good. Mr. Baker, tell us who your core constituents are.
Every race, creed, and color between the age of 18 and 24.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you give them a big round of applause before they give their final speeches?
Okay, that actually can be your final statement. I thought that was fabulous. We'll give you 1 minute, and in the meantime, we'll ask Kenny Brown to come up for the closing. We're going to start in the middle with Dr. Grant. 1 minute closing, really 1 minute. We're
Okay.
past 8:30.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for staying and for being so attentive and for listening to all of us. One thing's for sure, February 4th, number one, please remind everyone to vote regardless of whether there's snow. But February 4th and in April, you'll be selecting your next congressional representative. One of us will likely be that person. The rest of us will be their constituent, which is why we have to treat each other with respect and listening attentively and also service. Be accountable and be service-oriented. I want to thank you for listening to my healthcare message. I want to thank you for this opportunity to be Democracy in Action and be able to try to represent you in Congress. Thank you very much. Leslie Grant for Congress.
Tell us why we should vote for you. The next person will go to Dr. Gosnell. Why should we vote to you? We have all these qualified candidates. What makes you different?
Well, we don't have enough time. There's lots of reasons. I really am sincere about all the efforts that I've put thought into. My website, you can go to electgosnell.com, but it depends what you believe in. Do you believe the Constitution intended Congress to be a landing spot for politicians as they go along the way from one position to the next? Do you believe the founders intended, as I do, for the district to be made up of all of us, businesswomen, businessmen, doctors, bartenders? Look at AOC. We're bringing this to a new level of discussion, and I think it's time for new leadership. And I think you should consider my constituents, I think you should consider my candidacy because of what I will bring to the table as far as a plan for you. Thanks.
Thank you. Professor Higginbotham?
3 reasons you should consider voting for me. One is knowledge. I know the Constitution. I know the democratic process. We've got a constitutional crisis in D.C. Send me down there. I'll use that knowledge to deal with it. Second, values. I am someone who has a reputation for honesty, integrity, hard work, fair play, transparency, and ability to deal with money. You send me down to Washington, I'm going to remember that. I'm going to use those qualities throughout everything I do. And then third, I'm a fighter. I get stuff done. When I was dean of the law school, when I was leader of the Public Justice Center, when I headed the scholarship program, I got those things done. You send me to Washington, I'm going to get stuff done for the 7th. Higginbotham for Congress, the name you can trust.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
Okay, I look for solutions. My family's always solved solutions. I look at things that worked in the past. I don't try to reinvent the wheel. What worked in the community, in our community in the past, is businesses. I saw businesses all around me. I saw black businesses around me. I don't see that now. Our dollar doesn't circulate in our community. One community, it circulates 120 times. My community, not one time. It's nothing new. Y'all, we're trying to come up with new solutions, but the old ways work. And that's the problem with this generation, our generation. We don't learn from our past mistakes, and we don't look at what worked for our parents and how we raise our kids and how we raise our community. That's the problem. We're trying to do it different than our parents, and some things, a lot of things worked. Thank you.
Delegate Hill?
Thank you very much, and thank you again for having us, and thank you for coming out. So here it is. With the confluence of problems that we have, we don't have a lot of time to waste. So whether we're talking about climate change, violence, the cost of prescription medications, the cost of healthcare, environmental impacts on our community, we need effective leadership. No one is saying to me, you know what we need in Washington? We need one more attorney. You know what we need in Washington? We need one more policy expert. You know what we need? We need one more seasoned politician. We need to have the right voices at the table if we're going to have the right solutions. So what I'm suggesting is that you want an experienced advocate who relates to people of all social, economic, racial, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, who has a proven record of taking care of people and helping to solve problems, who has a proven record of effective legislative solutions, and that is who I am. I'm Terry Hill, Send Terry Hill to Congress, put a doctor in the House. Thank you very much. Terry Hill for Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Conker?
4 reasons. First, I'm the candidate who can take the fight to Donald Trump like nobody else. Honor and courage from now until November. Secondly, I've got the most experience in the military, academia, private industry, education. Third, I'm going to donate half my salary back to District 7. And fourth, I'm right on the issues. The 2 biggest issues are climate change and financial responsibility. You've heard lots of the candidates talk about money. I'm a finance professor. I'm going to find the money and bring it back to District 7. Paul Conker for Congress.
Thank you. Senator Carter.
Thank you. Thank you for bearing with us. I know that this can be long, and a lot of people sound similar with good ideas. Very clear reason why you should vote for me on February 4th, because beyond the talk, I've walked the walk. As a state legislator, I've championed so many issues over the years where oftentimes the rest of the establishment Democrats just haven't still caught up. We don't need someone that's going to go to Congress and equivocate on whether or not we need Medicare for all and everyone is entitled to health care, to quality health care, and that no one should be left out. We don't need someone going to Congress that's going to prefer to make sure that the insurance companies are okay beyond all of the people. We don't need someone that's going to equivocate as to whether or not we need greater loan forgiveness programs, but not understand that we need free public education, higher education, and we need loan forgiveness. I'm not talking the talk, I've walked the walk, and it's hard for you to know just by what people say, so I encourage you all to Google me. I am the only person, while people talk about corruption, that actually has a record of fighting it, which is why I was named runner-up for Marylander of the Year for fighting against corruption. Jill on the Hill, thank you.
Thank you. I actually was named Marylander of the Year, and I appreciate that.
But not for anti-corruption,
My brother here said something earlier about how he really didn't like the dirt that's being slung in this campaign and how some people trying to detract are whispering and giving innuendo and saying, Kwesi has a woman problem. I don't have any woman problem. 16 years ago, when I was at the NAACP as a single man, I dated a single woman for 6 months. Someone who I didn't date said, oh, must be sexual favors, why is he dating her? And everything took off after that, investigations. The League of Women Voters reviewed everything for a year and concluded there was no problem. In fact, the National Organization of Women, and in fact, they decided to endorse me. I've been fortunate, that was long ago, but I have a wonderful wife now. I actually married up. I married way up, and we have a good life. And I'm not going to tell you why and what you should do. Follow your heart, pray on it, and just know that I am proven, have been tested, and I'm ready to go to work for you on day one. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Branch.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are serious times. We really have to get a person there that's fresh, that understands Washington, D.C. Why should I go to Washington? I've served for a congressman already. I understand. I've walked with them. I understand what the district looked like and what the needs are. I understand. But the other reason is that I have 25 years of service in the General Assembly. I'm the House Majority Whip leading the state and the district now. So I am the person you need. And when you talk about bringing money back to the district, I was vice chair of the Appropriation Committee, which is a committee that brings money back to the city of Baltimore, to the county of Baltimore County, to all of the counties that are in the state. But basically, I am what you need. And I want you to consider me for the position of congressman for the 7th Congressional District.
Thank you. Mr. Robb.
I never heard a whip like that. So one of the things I've learned in working in community development, perhaps the biggest thing, is that we should concentrate on what unites us more than any other thing, which is our humanity. It doesn't matter whether we're white or black or male or female or straight or gay or whatever. What matters is that we have someone who understands and is empathetic to our concerns and has a past performance, proof of past performance, that will fight to make certain whatever is the representation, whatever is the judgment that happens in Washington, D.C., is carrying you with it. I have that in my heart. My last 20 years back that up. Whoever gets the seat, whether it's not me, whether it's me or someone else, I'm going to work with that person or be that person. I hope you will consider me. And look at our websites, compare, check out the details of our proof of past performance, and go with performance over platitudes. Thank you. Saphir for Congress. Vote for me February 4th.
Mr. Baker?
One sec here. Before I get started, a show of hands for people who feel they have a voice in government, excluding people on stage. Not many hands going up, 2 or 3. Okay, you know, in the days prior to computers, high-speed internet, and smartphones, a district voted for a representative who alone went away to Washington, D.C. to speak for their district. The 21st century approach I will take as your representative is to work directly with District 7 to identify the majority position for how District 7 wants me to vote. My pledge to you is to vote with, not just for, District 7 100% of the time on any and all major legislation, not doing the drug deals in the backyard. Today, the U.S. Congress is in need of 21st century leadership, leaders who will directly represent the will of their constituents and who can make balanced, informed, and measured decisions for how best to respond to the global climate crisis. 3 seconds. In this group of 24 candidates, I am that leader. Thank you. Vote tdanbaker.com on February 4th.
Thank you. Last candidate,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Spikes.
Good evening, everyone, for the last time. Number one, I want your vote. That's what I will say. Number two, let me say this. I once heard that it was really difficult to find out who the general was in the Army because he worked like a soldier. That was me. I worked like a soldier for the Congressman for 15 years, and I've done all the work that was needed to make sure this district was ran properly and how everyone in this room was proud of that man. But do not forget who did the work. Do not forget who trusted him with his staff. He trusted me with his staff. He trusted me with his outreach. He trusted me with the vision. And also, I'm trusting you all to allow me to have the leadership to move you all forward. I want to make this very simple. There's no learning curve here for me. I want to make that very clear to everyone. If you're looking to see if the next candidate or the candidates that you may want to choose are going to act or do anything different, you need to know right now there will be nothing different about me because the process that we had in place is what already was good. And I'm going to bring my new vision to make this district as even great as it was before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, candidates. And we're going to bring Kenny Brown up. We're almost there.
Here we go. All right. You know, I've seen you guys a half dozen times or more. But what I'm happy to really say is that we took and put a lot of time and energy to bring them to you this evening, and so that you could hear from their mouths. The Northwest Voice, we're not going to try to tell you who to vote for. We wanted you to hear from them, and you're smart enough out there to make the decisions that have to be made. So what I do want everyone to consider is the people sitting behind me are the people who deemed you important enough to be here tonight, to talk to you personally. Don't forget that. Don't forget that at all. They are not taking you for granted. They're coming to speak to you directly. So on behalf of the Northwest Voice, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We didn't embarrass ourselves in Baltimore County. I've been to a lot of these already, and I believe this was the largest number out of all the forums that have been done. We did it right here in Baltimore County. So give yourself a round of applause. Okay. All right. I want to thank Charles Robinson from Maryland Public Television, Janet Anderson from the Northwest Voice newspaper, and Larry Young from WLB. Trust me, people will be talking about this tomorrow. All right? We can all go home, and I hope you enjoyed the food. All right. Huh? Oh, is the Reverend? Oh, yes. Is the pastor still here? She left? Okay. Oh, sponsors. Woodstock's Job Corps. See those young people out there that